Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. So these talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m., both here in the building and live online, online. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation. My name's Martin O'Leary. I'm the studio community lead here. I'm a white man in my late 30s with long hair and a beard. I'm not going to describe how I'm dressed today. It's very boring. Every Friday, we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in our space, hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So especially big welcome to those of you who are new to the studio, for whom this may be the first time you're here. Can I get hands up who's new to the studio? OK, go one or two. Well, this bit's for you. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? We are a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, where we are right now, University of the West of England, University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England. And what we do is we offer studio space, desks, meeting rooms, events, opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make time for collaboration. So quick bit of housekeeping, feel free to move around. We've got a kitchen back there. You can grab a glass of water, tea, coffee, whatever. Please don't use the microwave. It interferes with the induction loop setup in here. I'm not sure what that's about. If you need to take a break, we have a quiet space just through this wall to my left, your right. Just pop in there, take a break. Fire exits. If you hear a fire alarm, that's real. The studio team will direct you, but the fire exits are at that end of the space at either end. And accessible toilets and baby change. I do not see any babies here, as usual, but just in case anyone's got a baby hiding, there is baby change in the corridor just over there next to the kitchen. There'll be a Q&A at the end of this talk. Those of you who are watching online, you got to pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Emma will be your voice today. She will read them out. If you're in the room, I've got a microphone. I'll send it round. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, to @PMStudioUK on Twitter, or @Pervasive Media Studio @mastodon.social on Mastodon, or @Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. Anyway, our speakers for today are Michael Jenkins and Mina Fombo, the directors of Beyond We. So 3 years ago, in the deepest depths of lockdown, they gave a lunchtime talk for us when we were all presenting from our bedrooms about their plans for Bristol African Caribbean Culture Space, which was an ambitious plan to convert a boat in Bristol Harbour into a new black-owned arts venue. Now they're back, and they're going to tell us what they've learned from trying to achieve that and what their plans are for the future. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Mike and Mina.
Great, thank you. So yeah, we've got about 45, 55 minutes or so, and I wanted to just be a bit maverick and say we don't have to hold the Q&A to the end. If you feel like a question comes up as we're going through, raise a hand, and if it's appropriate, we'll take it, and if not, you can wait to the end. But let's try that. And yeah, so as the intro was saying, like for people that have been on our journey so far, the goal for us was to buy a new venue boat for the Bristol Harbour, to convert that into a black-led art space. And that was really about celebrating and profiling and showcasing the work of black artists for all of the city, the region, and international networks to enjoy. And
it was also just to add on, also part of forming a landmark to sort of, as a bit of a recognition for Bristol's involvement in the transatlantic slave trade, because nothing exists like this in the city. So yeah. Yeah,
and I think so. Today, what we want to do is just kind of, for people that haven't been on the journey so far, we'll do a quick recap of what we did, a quick recap of why we initially started, because I think those reasons don't change. It's just that we might fulfill that in a different avenue. And then in terms of the title of the talk as well, knowing when to use a lifeboat, we'll do a quick sort of rundown of what we see the lifeboat as being and share some of the learnings along the way for other people. But I think it's not a secret to say that we're not buying a venue boat in the harbour anymore. And I think for us, in terms of the backstory of that, is like, I know you said 3 years, but we came together in, I think, the summer of 2019.
Summer 2019,
to initially start this. So for us, it's been like almost 4 years of kind of like, trying to make this happen. So we're going to talk you through a little bit through the journey, a little bit where we got to, and then share some learnings. And again, feel free to jump in and ask some questions. Does that sound okay? Fantastic. So Mike, why did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, so as far as like so initially it was called Bristol's African Caribbean Culture Space, which essentially does what it says in the tin. I wanted to create a space that didn't exist, and it was, growing up in Bristol, not really having not in schools, not really being taught about the history of the city, where it got all its wealth from, and then learning about it can make you feel a bit disenfranchised with the sort of, especially if you've sort of been growing up and coming down to this part of the city, not really feeling welcomed, not really feeling like you fit in. And the history of these waters are very important. So yeah, that was the reason why. I mean, I love history. I'm really into history, so that was my sort of initial idea of like, yeah, Bristol needs some sort of memorialization, some sort of landmark to let visitors and residents of the city have a better understanding of Bristol's relationship with Africa and the Caribbean. So that was my sort of initial take on it, yeah.
And I think for me, my family are Nigerian, our tribe, we're from like River State, I'm like a people of the water. So I think it was in my blood to do something in the water. But I also have another company called Black Girl Convention. And I remember back in 2016, 17, I got a grant to do an event. And I was like, right, let me do an event in Bristol. And I spent 6 months running around Bristol trying to find a venue that was owned by a black woman that I could then hire and use. And I couldn't find one that was appropriate in the space. So I always had this connection to space. Me and Mike got together with another company, Black Wave, which is our film company. And just through talking about that, we kind of realized we had really similar passions around owning space, having space that was owned by the black community so that we could put our own money into our own spaces, showcase that talent. And our connection to the harbour and the water and the history of Bristol kind of just all came full circle. And I think for us, the USP was about having it in the harbour.
Yeah.
We could have just gone and hired a space, which one, we wouldn't have owned, and two, anyone can hire a space, which on hindsight would have been much easier.
Would have been a lot
but
easier.
we decided that, but to try and buy a boat was kind of how we got
that was the unique thing about it, and Bristol is known for its boats. So we thought having this sort of a space where we can, showcase black artists, show history as well of Bristol. We thought it was a perfect sort of fit and something that's very unique and hasn't been done anywhere around the world that we know of. So.
Yeah, and I think for us, just to add to that, just recognising that in Bristol, the biggest tourist attraction is the SS Great Britain. So, it was business-wise, we were like, okay, there's so much we could do with this. So that's kind of our passions for coming trying to get the boat in the first place and where that came to. In terms of where we got to the point of designing the venue. So we obviously launched the project, we fully incorporated the business in December 2019, and behind the scenes, we were running around behind the scenes, liaising with the harbour team, the people in the council. We brought on a bunch of stakeholders, so and sort of just a steering group, so recognising we wanted to draw on the experiences from the city. So obviously Watershed, Norwest Media Centre,
Bristol Festival of Ideas.
Bristol Festival of Ideas. So George Ferguson obviously owns a boat,
Grain Barge.
And so we were really just trying to draw all that knowledge in together to kind of formulate our plan before we launched. And then meanwhile, COVID's now happened and everything stopped. And then George Floyd also happened. And there's a lot of energy in the city and everyone was saying, what can we do, what can we do? So we made a strategic decision to launch prematurely, recognizing that we could capitalize on the energy and say, look, there are people behind the scenes trying to make stuff happen.
Yeah,
and it's
they just dumped Colston in the harbour. It went viral around the world, and for 9 months before this, we had this project in mind, and we were trying to create this, and we thought, okay, well, this is a perfect time to sort of launch this project because it all fits in with what we're trying to do. So that's when we made that decision to sort of launch it in June. June 2020, yeah.
So we did the launch, we did a big fundraiser, and then off the back of the meanwhile also we'd already got a grant from the Arts Council, so we'd taken the Arts Council and Bristol City Council's artists team, the cultural team,
head of culture
down to the boat that we'd found that we wanted to buy, and they were fully on board and they gave us a small grant to sort of do the R&D, to begin the R&D.
Yeah.
So we launched the fundraiser.
And a deposit, it was part of a deposit to purchase this vessel, but yeah.
We'll get into the politics. And so that was all happening behind the scenes. So we've launched, we raised the money, and obviously we'd started obviously at this point we're bringing the city on board. So we did a big consultation survey to get loads of obviously wider city support involved. We did a big stakeholder launch with lots of arts organisations around the city and also around the region as well. We brought people in from down in Devon and Wales and just our target was kind of the Southwest, Lower Midlands and Wales, recognising we'd have that draw.
Yeah.
We managed to get some investment from a friend of my brother's. It's always good to have a brother that went to a private school. So he's got a rich network. So we got, and based over in the Caribbean islands, so they were investing as well. So we really made a lot of noise, a lot of buzz, and just kind of got the work going. And we brought together an artist network.
Yeah,
and again, that was really around lots of consultation around, what is this going to mean specifically for Black artists? What is it going to mean for you? What do you need? What's going to be the value? We've had this idea we think is cool, but actually is it needed?
Yeah.
So we were kind of just redoing the R&D phase, as well as asking the wider city around what would you engage in and kind of doing all of that work. I guess other things just to kind of share on the backstory would just be, what else did we do? Things like, we obviously did a huge business plan, and then we had an operational plan because obviously COVID had happened.
Yeah.
So we were back and forth with the council at this point. And I guess to kind of just be direct, it was very, very slow. And I say the council, I want to say specifically the harbour side team. I think from day one, the culture team were on board. They said yes, they put their hands in their pocket and they committed. The mayor's office was 100% behind this on board as well.
Yeah.
We had other councillors on board, so Thangam Debonair came on board.
Yeah, she's the MP as well. So
Yeah.
we had various different people that were fully on board with it. And that's when we learned how sort of disconnected the actual council is, and they don't really talk to each other how they should be, So that was the start of our journey of learning that.
Yeah, so we've been around the houses, but that's kind of going on behind the scenes. And I guess the last thing I'd say about just the pre-work to this point was, one of the things we did is we joined the Harbourside Forum. So they're basically all the traders and businesses on the harbour or around the harbour have a quarterly meeting and they discuss things. They spend a lot of time discussing toilets, I'm not going to lie, because it's one of the biggest challenges that you learn. But I think for us, what was really useful was just really understanding the whole dynamic and the workings of the harbour.
Yeah.
And just, for us, we were like, we want to be part of this. We need their buy-in. And again, we presented to them. They were all on board. Loads of connections and excitement and energy for the project.
And that's one of the, big takeaways from this was the enthusiasm, the support from all different sectors, all different sort of people in Bristol, with the boating community. I mean, everybody recognised the issue and recognised that this was a way of sort of addressing the issue in a way which was not divisive, but more of a way of bringing people together so we can have a shared space to discuss these things. Yeah, so that was really encouraging.
So that was the dream. Let's talk about, that's us, we've done that already. So we thought we'd share a report. So we talk about the relationship with the students, and then we'll just show you some of the things that what we got to before we do the learnings.
Yeah,
the main
yeah,
learnings.
yeah. So the report, would you go to the next slide, Mina? I guess the visualization. Yeah, so we worked with some students from UE, architecture students, and we had lots of discussions with them, and they helped us build. So alongside a business plan that we had created, we also had this feasibility study done, which was really useful as far as figuring out what type of boats we were figuring out the type of boats we wanted, where we would put it, the sort of footfall, and how we wanted to make it an inclusive and really importantly an accessible space, because what we have recognized is that, if you're disabled or sort of or impaired, you can't necessarily access boats, ships on the harbour. It's very difficult. It's very sort of, ships are not really made, and they don't have they're just not really suitable. So we had these ideas from the start of making sure that this boat would be accessible to any and everybody, basically, which would have made it another unique sort of proposition, having it on the harbour. And also during the sort of during this feasibility study, we used all the sort of feedback and comments that we got from our survey. It really helped to inform how we would create the boat, how we would what we would integrate into the boat as far as its design and things like that. Do you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to add as well, for us, one of the things that we talked about was always whether the boat was, we got asked a lot, which the question was, is this going to be static or is it going to be a movable space?
Yeah.
And we kind of were committed to the idea that it would be a static space.
Yeah.
But future planning, there might be a smaller boat that goes off up to Bath, whatever. But the idea is that it's going to be a static space. And again, that also fed into the accessibility of the boat in terms of what would need to be in terms of the jetty and all that kind of stuff that would be around it.
Yeah.
So that was...
Yeah, and the next one. Yeah, so I mean, you know, we had an ambition. We did identify a vessel at, right at the beginning of this process. So we didn't just go into this fully blind. We did have like a massive vessel which could have been converted into a venue. That space already had planning permission to be just literally opposite the harbour side, opposite the Watershed, right next to Piro's Bridge. And with this space, so that was the initial space that we had. That had a lot of legal issues with the harbour, which we eventually found out. So that became an option. It just became an option we couldn't use anymore. So we were thinking, okay, we can buy in a barge, but you know, also thinking about building one from like a base and sort of building from there. So yeah, it was going to have 2 levels, and if you go to the next slide, you know, we were going to have. I guess, yeah, so this is more about the accessibility and the inclusive space of it. And I suppose what we just wanted to show you is that we were thinking about all of these different sort of elements of the boat right from the beginning, and using the help of like these architecture students, which were amazing. They really helped to bring it to life. Yeah, so we had essentially what this venue space was going to be was multi-use space. So 1 minute we could have it as a gallery showcasing artistic work. Another time we could have it as a small performance space, an intimate performance space. Obviously we make films, so of course we'd have a sort of floating cinema in there. But yeah, so this was, and another unique thing that we felt we wanted to have was the offer of having African and Caribbean cuisine served on the vessel itself, because I mean in this area you can't get that type of food. It's just not authentically, well, as far as I know. I mean, yeah, I mean I've walked along this area lots, and yeah, you just can't get, you know, if I want to go get some jerk chicken or curry goat rice and peas, it's just not happening. So we wanted to offer that as well as a space where, yeah, you'd be able to get, it would be just more inclusive, and there'd be more sort of reasons why people would come to the harbour side.
And explicitly not Turtle Bay, just to put that in there. I think as well, just to touch on, so in terms of the spaces, you said the gallery space, we had the restaurant cafe, we had the outdoor barbecue space, we had the screening space, and then obviously you've got like your main like event pop-up space. And again, versatile space, easily utilizing, and also something that, you know, people would hear us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When you're on the harbour in the evening. I think also to touch on, that's the galley space.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, and that's the performance space. That was the idea, and yeah, we had also ideas of having an artist living on an artist space, an artist quarters for them to live and be a resident. So that's where we could really bring in international artists, bring them to Bristol, bring them to the city, and get them to create new work here. So that was all part of the idea of Beyond We.
And I think I just add on that resident, that came off the back of, with the resident space, people being immersed in the city. So you're immersed in a space, in a venue. Festival Ideas, I don't know if Watershed were involved, but Festival Ideas did a partnership a few years ago, and they gave out grants, and I got one of those grants and went off to Oakland and was part of Black Tech Fest. It's like 3 days of just being immersed. You know, I stayed in an Airbnb, and you kind of get so much more from being, you know, with a resident or with a host, and then in a space to bring that learning back. And I think for us, I guess we're sharing this is because we still feel like there's lots of elements of this that can still be taken on board in terms of how we host international artists, not just come and be a resident in a space and leave, but are there spaces where artists can stay or live, like artist hotel type vibes. So I think the Media Centre did something right as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so key learnings. We'll run through these. So I think we wanted to just highlight sort of power of partnerships. I think for us, we recognized, like I said, from day one, we brought on a steering board, we went around and just made a lot of networks, and that really just helped inform so much of the work. I think for us, George Ferguson was an amazing partner in the early days. I think just being able to have access to a vessel that was going to be a similar size to the vessel we had, someone who'd been mayor of the city, so understood the inner workings of the council, but also from a budgeting perspective and forecasting, just to really legitimize our whole offer. Because I think, you know, I'm going to say it, like, as Black, this chair is so unstable. I feel like I've nearly fallen like 3 times and I'm just not as tall as you. No, I want to stay up here. I feel like it'll be growth if I survive and don't slip again. And but yeah, so I feel like what was really great about George, so sharing the budget. Yeah, I think as Black founders, I definitely feel like you go into some rooms and people are sort of, they just don't, I think they just didn't see us as being legit or being professional or whatever it might be. And they're sort of like, have you got a business plan? It's like, yeah, of course we do. Like, why would we come in front of you without a business plan? So I think as well, they're like, well, how do you get these figures? You know, there's lots of just the energy in the room. And if you know, you kind of know. And so I think for us, being able to have those partnerships and like have all the legit figures and be like, yeah, this is a live working vessel. This is the updated version since COVID. This is based on all this information. Just really helped us sort of fast track some of those early blockers that I would say were put in place, rather than us being seen as legitimate to begin with.
Yeah.
So that was great. And I just think also just having that opportunity to speak with other the CEOs, directors in the city of actually you're doing all the right things. Do you know what I mean? Because we were up against a brick wall a lot, and you feel like, I mean, are we crazy? Like, should it take this long for someone to reply to a simple question about how do you get mooring on the harbour? Like, are we, you know, and people say, no, this is what happens. This is normal. You're not doing anything wrong. No, it can take 5 months to get a bank account with 2 signatures because that's just what banks are like sometimes. So I think the power of the partnerships is really, really valuable for us. Is there anything you want to add on that?
No, I think that's, I think you covered it,
Cool. I think value of our students, I think that report, I mean, we'll share the report online after again. It's a really in-depth feasibility study to the point that they went round and they mapped, like I said, Mike was saying, all the points on the harbour, all the sizes of all the boats, the cost. They did a lot of that groundwork for us. And I think for me, historically, like I haven't had that much of a deep relationship with sort of student or master student, postgraduate teams in terms of them actually working on a project as part of their project. But just going through this, whilst initially it was like, oh shit, the students are coming, like 4 o'clock, you know, did you know? Yeah, I knew, but you know, whatever. And then they turn up and you're ready for them. But they were so excited and energized about this project. And they were just like, this is the best project we've worked on since we've started, or, you know, like it's amazing. And so and I think, you know, having one of the students was from Nigeria. Well, 2 of the students were from Nigeria. And so for them to bring, there was just so like, it's great to be seen and to just bring in lots of cultural elements that they wanted to have into the space, as well as having that specialism of being architecture students was just invaluable for us.
It was amazing, it was amazing.
I think for us, key learning would just be, if you're not working with students already, there's so many opportunities to engage with the universities where it's just part of their accreditation. And it does take a little bit of energy at the beginning. But once they're on board, what they produce, you know, it just brings really lots of new insights. Yes, at the back.
It's amazing.
Sorry. I was just wondering.
Just gonna get the mic. It's for the YouTubers.
Okay. I was just wondering how you engaged with the students. Did you approach like the kind of teaching staff in the relevant subject area, or did you already have connections?
Yeah, I mean, Mina and I both have got connections already, but it was one of the was it the supporting staff teachers? It was one of those that actually approached us and was like, would you want to work with some students? And we'd never worked with students like that before, so I've done a lot of work with young people. I'm up for working with students, so that was really, you know. But I think what I learned was like how much value they actually brought to it. So, which I didn't really understand that at first. But so it was the teaching staff. I think she was teaching or pastoral person at the uni, I think. Yeah,
and we had engagement with Bristol Uni and UE, and I think you know, it ultimately came down to the students' interest in the project, and the ones that really came through were the ones that were really, really invested in the project alongside us. And they were like, they were out like all the time, like messaging us, sending photos. They really got on board. And I think for us, we've got networks in the city already. You know people from around the way. And I think just through doing talks like this, a little bit of socials, our socials weren't that deep, but a little bit of socials, the message got through, and I think we just had those contacts were made. And I think as well, I just add, I know that specifically with those architecture students, like they specifically look for projects that are real world projects that are happening in the city, so that the work isn't just conceptual, it actually has a value and a benefit to the city as well. So that was, I think, about the value of students.
Yeah. Students are the future.
Yes. So things aren't always as they seem. That was really about the harbour side politics in as nice a way possible.
Wow.
And just recognising that when you walk around Bristol Harbour, for us, you're like, right, there's so much space here. And then you're kind of like, they're like, well, there's no space to have a boat. And it's like, well, I mean, I can see this, and this. So when you say there's no space, and this boat we're looking for already has planning permission, what do you mean there's no space? And actually, after about 3 years, we finally got an official tour to answer the question that we've been asking for 3 years, which is where can we have this boat on the harbour then? And actually, that was an exercise really to tell us everywhere we couldn't have it.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, it showed where we could have it, which is one space.
Yeah, one space. Just one place.
In theory.
Yeah.
But anyway. But what that means, and the reason for that, though, to listen to the learnings, is that they were saying things like, well, you can't have a boat that's not high, that doesn't match the same height as the harbour wall for health and safety reasons. And so our question was, well, can we not just build like a jetty type thing? In which case they didn't have an answer for that. But apparently you can't have a boat that's not as high as the sides. Lots of the land around the harbour has been sold off.
Yeah.
So, or it might be that the buildings have been sold off or owned
With
by
the
like,
land, yeah.
or not even so much the land. The the building's been sold off, and like you said, the land's been sold off, but the harbour wall still belongs to the council. So you can have a boat put there, but you can't access it because the land has been sold off.
Yeah.
So there's lots of spaces along the harbour that, from the harbour's perspective, they're like, well, we would want to use it for boats. But then the people that own all the buildings or all the renovation and development around the city are like, we don't want people walking past our building or down the side to get onto the boat. So all of that, and there's lots of contracts that are just, there are contracts that were signed in the 60s, 70s when it wasn't really necessarily as profitable to harbour. So they've been signed and they're non-breakable.
Yeah, a lot of land got sold off a long time ago, basically, and there's nothing modern administrations can do about it. Which is shocking, but that is what it is.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's not a mess. It's not practical or feasible based on everything we've been learning to have the venue in lots of the places where there's lots of footfall already, where there's bridges, where there's accessibility. So we were just a lot of learnings just around how much the city does not own of the actual harbour, and then the bits that you just can't use. So there's lots of areas where there's lots of water sports. That's just for water sports. And then there's areas that are for residents only, just for residents. And then there's areas that are for mooring, but it's been sold off privately. So people are charging like maybe double or triple what the council charged for mooring, but it's privately owned, so they're recouping that finance, and that money doesn't go back into the harbour. So there's a lot going on. So that's something that, when things aren't always as they seem, it looked like a great opportunity, but on the ground, it's not. Lots of things just aren't possible.
Yeah.
Full stop, new paragraph. A multi-million-pound yacht did appear out of nowhere. But so maybe things aren't always as they seem unless you've got lots of money.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
Yeah. I'm just gonna wait for the mic.
Thanks. This might be a bit of an aside, but do you have that information anywhere of who privately owns all of that land around the harbour? Like, as in, is it mapped anywhere? Is there a way that we can find to get it back?
The council must have that information. We had a verbal tour as we went around the harbour.
Yeah.
So
After 3 years, they took us around the harbour and give us and said, this has been sold off. This is, they didn't tell us who had brought or anything like that. It was just more of like, as Mina said, they were telling us where we couldn't put it, basically.
Without saying you can't put it here.
Yeah.
But so it must be on the public record somewhere.
Yeah.
However, lots of things you would think would be somewhere just aren't.
Yeah.
So if you find out, maybe share it.
Yeah.
But it's like I said, it's an interesting exercise.
Yeah.
Consider the external climate. So just to add, obviously it did take 3 years. We do need to factor in COVID because I recognise the world did stop. So we do have to give that sort of leeway within that space. However, we still think it did take a long time to kind of get that level of engagement.
Just basic answers to questions, that you would expect. I suppose a lot of information. So they did go through a whole harbour-side review, which took some time, where I guess that was the whole point of that, was to make it more accessible and transparent, like Yeah, the external climate, I guess COVID, yeah, of course, that was a big problem, but people were dealing with it and learning how to work in new ways. So I wouldn't use that as a full excuse personally, but yeah.
So yeah, we mentioned again, just in terms of learnings, if you're launching a project of a scale like this, consider this external climate. We can't predict the future. I think like I said, we tried to use I guess partly COVID, but partly the energy that was caused as a result of George Floyd's murder as a catalyst to support, what we were doing back here in Bristol. And I guess I'd say that I still think we made the right decision in terms of reviewing where we were at and thinking, okay, maybe let's just go now, because you can do all the R&D in the world and things might just go out of date, or you can just go for it and learn as you go. And I don't believe there's any right or wrong way. So for us, I think, just consider the external climate. And then I guess the other thing for us, we were like, oh my God, we'll get this boat, we'll have it on the harbour. We picked out our spots. We'll branch out onto the patio. We can double the size of our sort of, of our business, in the summer months, outdoor heaters. COVID happened, and then everybody was on the patio. And so what originally for us was a USP, when the world changed, that changed. And what's happened is a lot of those spaces have stayed using the patio. And again, in terms of things aren't always as they seem, whilst a lot of those spaces, based on our understanding and talking to the other businesses, they were like short-term, sort of post-COVID ways to help businesses get back on their feet. But that short term then became a bit longer and then a bit longer. And so whilst you might have, let's say, again, universities are great, but there's also a lot of problems with universities. But in terms of lots of universities own lots of buildings. So for example, not only do you now own this building that you had for a long time, you now own the patio at the front of the building just because you own the building. So even if you did put a boat alongside it, that prime location of the patio may not go to you now because someone else already owned the building. So a lot of opportunities again, even the places that in theory we thought you could put, you then also lose the patio. So that was something else that changed in terms of the external climate and impacting the business plan and so on.
Yeah.
Couple more and then we'll go back to Q&A. So everything takes longer than planned, and that was really, I think we said it already, that was really just around like recognizing the challenges of working with such a large institution, and I guess just thinking about any businesses, projects, work that you're doing, when there's multiple departments, I think even within the best run businesses in the world, it just takes longer than planned. And for us, because those departments don't talk to each other and they have conflicting priorities, it just kept making it impossible for us to even just
get an answer.
Turn on the ignition even, do you know what I mean? Or get an answer to a question, because it would get battered around and then they'd have a restructure, then they'd have a restructure, then they'd have a restructure.
And then people get made redundant, people leave,
Yeah,
so.
and it goes again, it goes round, and just going round and round the houses. There's no consistency because there's no central, felt like there's no central blueprint.
Yeah.
But I think also wider than that, just our experience in just working with grant organisations or grant bodies, you apply for something and it takes a year before you get the yes to then run a longer term project. It's only really smaller term pots that come quicker, and there's not necessarily any sustainability with those smaller term pots. So I think it's just bearing in mind. I think for us, if we came into this when we sort of had the idea and we were like, it's going to be at least 5 years before you set foot of a venue on the water, I don't know if we would have said, no, we're not going to do it, because we were definitely up for the challenge, but we really didn't anticipate that it would be so hard.
Well, at least we'd have a time scale.
At least we'd have a time scale, right, yeah.
We just don't have no time scale or anything like that.
Yeah.
And we were told, we were given a bit of advice that, the harbour side historically is a bit of a law unto itself. So we did have that in mind as far as thinking about, things taking longer than planned. I guess you need to have the right people saying yes in the right places. Yeah.
Which we did, but just not necessarily the action.
Yeah.
When people say yes with a smile, it doesn't mean that they say yes. They're just saying yes, and then the action. But that's just a learning that we had.
Yeah.
Okay. Put a price on your passions. I think that just really speaks to the fact that for us, this wasn't our and isn't our income. It doesn't pay our bills. Doesn't pay for our holidays or our livelihoods. It really was a project that was fueled based on passion. And I think the amount of time we ended up investing in this project, and again, 4 years in and still feeling like we've come a long way and lots of learning, but not necessarily getting the objective of what we initially set out to do in terms of the venue part of the project. I think we didn't really put a value on our time. We're like, yeah, we'll just do it. And then we just kept doing and doing and doing and doing and doing. And I think, especially as artists and as creators and as people that are like interested in social good and all of that stuff and, you know, really believing in our city, like, you know, being based in Bristol and invested, I think for us, next time we would really put a price on our passion at the beginning and not have any guilt, I would say, about that.
Yeah, because we all got to eat, man.
Artist networks are everything.
Yeah.
So I think for us, like, again, we have another business that we run. I've got another business around. Mike's also a freelancer. So we do a lot already. And then we were doing Beyond We. And I think in that whole time of COVID and just kind of being isolated, coming out the other side and still being able to engage with so many, specifically Black artists, and just kind of share and connect in the virtual spaces. We did some boat tours with them as well. And like, we managed to deliver our retreat and just kind of having that time to be like, hang on a second. Like, I got goosebumps talking about it because I was like, hang on a second, like, we need this. And I think for us, you know, we were like, yeah, we'll do this thing for artists. But I think we also did it for ourselves, not realizing at the time that it would have an impact on ourselves, if that makes sense.
And just like working with, during this time, it was obviously a peak time for everybody, like, you know, in particular artists, musicians and things like that. And I think throughout this whole process, I think I really just value having like an artist network and being networked with other sort of creatives within my field, but also not, you know, similar to sort of a space like the PM studio where you've got all these different creatives in one place. I mean, it's so important. It's really, really important. And I think the best thing that's come out of this project, out of the last 3-4 years, was actually being able to hold space for artists and bring artists together, really. And yeah, it's a lot more holistic and it's a lot more, you know, it's just a lot. I just feel like it satisfies, it soothes your soul in a different way, I think, and being with other creatives. Yeah, go on, Colin.
You were talking earlier about the fact that you can't get jerk chicken here at the Harbour, and then you can't get a place where you can have creatives coming together, talk about Black culture and Black art interest, all of this. And you just described the Harbour Wall being owned by the council and then everything else is owned privately. It sounds like it's going to be so hard for the centre, the heartbeat, the lungs of Bristol, as they call it. If we have the lungs of Bristol, which is the ferry company calls it that, if they don't have space here to hold that space, how can we go forwards?
It's a really good question, Colin. I don't know. Really good question.
We thought we had a solution.
We thought we had a solution for that.
Yeah.
We did have a solution, you know, but
I think I'd add to that, and I think I'd say you know, when we were at the artist retreat, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we go through now, but like, you know, we obviously have had suspicions along the way that like, is this going to happen or not? And we were talking to the artists and asking them, you know, do we still need a venue? 3 years on, virtual world, all that stuff. Do we still need a space? Because I think for us, the reflections were just sort of like, do you know what, we could, you know, I mean, we just need each other and we could just hire a space and just go there. And again, it took away the essence of, well, it's important to have ownership. And then you start to question, but then is it important to have ownership? Like, if you're fighting ownership to the extent that you can, against the brick wall, what's more important is to have the network. And the network can go anywhere and it's pop-up and you're not tied to rents and maintaining, you know,
toilets,
old buildings and maintaining toilets and all those things that come with owning a venue and running a business. And I think we've come out the other side of it, recognizing that our energy is best placed elsewhere, and that is in, you know, for us showcasing artists through the films that we make. It's about continuing the network, but not wasting our energy fighting a machine or the Titanic that isn't going to. Fighting a machine, I'm just there. How symbolic. I'm pointing to the picture of City Hall. Not fighting a machine, that we don't have the power to fight. So I don't know how you sort of solve that. If anyone has an answer, then I'm happy to like come to a meeting about it. But we've done it. We've tried to do it.
It was just the idea that going forwards to actually have a space called the Harbour, which has to be homogenised to please the shareholders of the buildings that don't want the noise and don't want footfall. That's just a really scary concept. But that's really a separate conversation for another time.
Yeah.
But
Agree with that.
but equally it's important because like it's true. The harbour is there. It's meant to be a working harbour for boats.
It was.
Yeah.
That should be the priority because it is a centrepiece of our city, like the lunch.
Yeah.
But we don't know the answer.
Thank you.
So that was Artist Networks, and I think it's worth saying before I go to Nana's words that something I didn't cap on. When very early on in the first year of the project, we split the project into one overarching business plan, but into two like strands. One was our artist development network, and one was the venue purchase. Recognizing that we can do the work with the artists really quickly. We just need to get everyone on Zoom. We just need to get everyone in a room. We can do that and make it happen and pay artists for their labor and deliver retreats and all that stuff. And then the venue needed its own business plan. So we split it in two. So what we are really proud to have achieved during this, and again, kind of summarizes what we've been saying all along in terms of the learnings, is that we are really proud to have been able to form that artist network and to be able to create that space and from the feedback that we've gotten, have an impact on individual lives without being accountable to like any specific funder or any body or someone with prescriptive criteria. We've just been able to ask the artist, what do you need? And let's use this space for you to decide what do you need right now to support your career, your well-being, whatever that might look like, in order for artists to keep creating work. And then Nana, so one of the retreat we had about, I think it was 12 or 13 came away. And this is Nana, one of the, and at first obviously it's intergenerational, just recognizing there's a whole spectrum of people that make art. And I think Nana I think her story in short was like, she always wanted to be an actress, her mum would always said no, then her mum died. And when Nana was like 65 or 67, she was like, right, I'm gonna be an actress now. She's an actress now, and she's like, acting in films and stuff and theatre. So she came on the retreat and was just she was a real life, a lung for us all.
Yeah.
Just in terms of that learning. But in her words, let's see if this is gonna work.
Loved it. I loved the relaxed atmosphere, the freedom, nobody judging anyone. No criticism, just being in a space where you can open yourself out. It has been lovely meeting young people and being welcomed, and treated as their equal. I've been overwhelmed by the reception I received right from the train station, Bristol Temple Mead, and when I got to this space here, Folly Farm, the aura was so welcoming and great. But working and learning from other people, it has been, so spiritual. And I feel so liberated that I will return again, over and over again, until they get rid of me and tell me don't come again.
Yeah.
So that was our.
That was one of our artists on the retreat. Yeah, is that
That's
it?
the end.
Yeah.
Is that the end?
Yeah, I think so.
Must be.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I deleted the last slide by accident. But before, I can wrap up with, I can do like a summary of what's happening next. But I guess any questions, comments, thoughts? Hope we've talked a lot, but.
All right.
Hello. Thanks for doing this talk and being so honest. And it's so frustrating even listening to it. So I can't really imagine how frustrating it's been for you guys. But to see you taking the positives and being really sort of magnanimous about it and sharing the learning is restorative in its own way. I guess I'm trying to listen to it optimistically, thinking, is there something hypothetically here? So did you say George Ferguson owns the grain barge?
Yeah, that was his.
And he's
venue.
super supportive. So can he sell you the grain barge, and we change that, and then that can be this venue? Because I feel like it's still got to happen, right?
We'd love it to happen, but yeah. But there's a big but. Yeah.
I feel like don't think that hasn't been a thought. But I feel like where I'm at now mentally, personally, and feel free to add, I think that like there's so much behind the scenes with the harbour side, with local government, with reduced funding, all of those things, you know, was it austerity, recession, all that stuff that's going on. I just think it would be a nightmare to run a venue on the harbour. And I don't see it getting better anytime soon. So if somebody wanted to run the whole thing, then I'd be like, yeah, take it. And, you know, we've done the groundwork. But I don't think I personally would want to take on like a beast like that, because I just think we've learnt so much, and actually it's know when to use a lifeboat. Do you know what I mean? There's time to get off.
Know when to leave. But yeah, I think, you know, and I think for me personally, I think I just see my sort of strength can be more in, you know, helping the artists, you know, giving artists opportunities to create work. I think that's sort of more of a focus for me, rather than going back and forth with a harbour team that aren't really supportive, or say that they are supportive but don't respond back to you for 9 months. So I think that is like, I think that's the learning that I've taken from it. Yeah.
At least we have this space.
Yeah, at least we got this space, which is, you know, really important.
Thanks for the story.
But in hindsight, you think maybe you were a bit too ambitious to begin with, and how would you approach it now if you were to start again? Yeah,
I think, I mean, the ambition was measured because we did have, you know, key stakeholders like the head of culture, like a key funder involved in it. We had the space itself, which had planning permission. I think we just discovered all the other things that we weren't informed about as we got into it. And obviously the way that the economy and everything has changed, and Brexit and all that, you know, as Mina said, is it the most productive thing to try and run a venue on the harbour in 2023, 2024? I mean, yeah, hindsight is a beautiful thing, but I think passion is what was the key thing for this. It was the passion and the fact that we felt that we could make it happen. We believed we could make it happen because we thought we had the right stakeholders, we had the right people supporting it, backing it, yeah.
Would you do it again?
Would we do it again?
I feel like if you'd asked me like a year ago and we did this then, I might say no, but I think we've had time to like make peace with it. From earlier, you know, from the last engagement we had, we kind of like, okay, that's it. And we've had maybe a couple of months before this talk has come about. So I think I've had time to make peace with it. And therefore, I'm able to say, I don't think we would change the decisions we made, because as Mike said, we had all the cards were there, and they were reading right at the time. So, and I feel like the learnings are just only going to be invaluable moving forward with whatever we do next or what we're doing. So I would do it again.
No, I wouldn't do it again. No, I'm joking. I think, yeah, the whole like, I mean, it's been an experience. I've definitely learned a lot about, you know, big institutions and the way that they work and operate, and, you know, and I just, you know, give it up for people that actually do have venues and that have had to go through, you know, these sorts of things and back and forth for years. And yeah, but I do think where we're at now, it is a bit of a blessing in disguise, because obviously when you know, we need the harbour team to be 1000% fully supportive of what we're doing, because you can't have a boat without, you know, access to the sewer or, you know, access to everything that the harbour offers. So if they're not really fully supporting us, then why would we want to get into you know, it's like an abusive marriage. Why would you want to get into an abusive marriage with them? It's like, no, thanks, we'll stay away, thank you.
And just to add to that, I think the other thing we didn't mention, but like everybody that we had spoken to from a leadership perspective that either owns a venue or has made some kind of significant change in the city, from construction and building to like whatever, they were just like, the way to do it is go and get a boat from wherever and stop asking questions and just bring it into the harbour on high tide.
Yeah.
And when it's in here, fight to keep it.
Yeah.
That's the only way it's going to happen.
And that's what we were thinking about doing.
Yeah, but we were just like, we thought about it, and people were like, the reason we got this building is because we just did this. The reason we changed this is because we just did this. We didn't ask for permission, we just did it, and then by that point, you know, what are you going to do? And we were very much like, I think we just had the pressure of being black finders and wanting to be legitimate and not wanting to kind of like break the law. I was like, I want to go on holiday, I don't want to have a criminal record. Like, all these things that go through your mind if you break the law. Like, but I think there's a level of privilege that comes when you have, you know, a history or a legacy of, you know, being illegitimate on the harbour, but living that way and being okay with it. Like, I didn't want to have that pressure, and nor did you. We wanted to be legit, do it properly, and we didn't see why that would be a problem. Yeah. Until everyone told us that was silly.
Why would you not want to be a pirate?
So if money was no object, you passively mentioned about the yacht situation. So say billionaire Oprah comes in, do you think the city centre is ready for a black-owned venue? Do you think the politics would subside if the money was there?
You see what just happened to the Underfell Yard?
Yeah.
We had many sort of times thinking, could that happen to us? Could we set up this venue, make this beautiful venue in the heart of Bristol, and then someone just comes along and firebombs it, like, you know, and you know? So I don't know, that's a really good question, and something I probably don't know the answer to, but deep down inside, I don't know, my gut is probably telling me we're not ready. And the reason why I'd say we're not ready is because, I mean, just look at the sort of legacy of the slave trade and how we talk about it. And you go to all the other cities around the UK, you go to Liverpool, they've got a slavery museum there. Don't like the name of the work, but at least they've got something there. You go to London, there's lots of different things. The Bordeaux, right? You go, there's lots of memorialization. And I mean, here, we don't have anything substantial. I mean, there's a little tiny plaque on the side of the M-Shed, which is talking about a book that was written 10 years ago about the slave trade, but there's nothing that actually commemorates, you know, the blood my ancestors shed for cities like Bristol to be thriving and you know, to be where we are today. So I don't know, if we haven't even got a little memorialization, you know, like we're quite backward when it comes to that, I'd say.
And I think just to add, looking forward, just recognizing that in terms of what the venue was going to stand for and achieve and do, I don't think that the city necessarily was ready to, I guess. I mean, I say, on one hand, there's an element of the city that was ready for it, but I think I've completely lost my train of thought. I was trying to get it back, but it's gone. So I just stopped talking. It's gone.
Thank you. That was a really helpful overview and context to kind of everything that's happened. I was really drawn to the kind of language you used about the lifeboat, and I think that's a really helpful way of describing the choice. I was just interested in like how difficult or easy it was to make that decision for something that you poured so much passion and heart into.
Yeah, it was really difficult. It was really difficult, but then I just thought about it in terms of a relationship, because with the Harbour team, we'd have to have a marriage, basically, and I don't want to get into no messed up marriage myself, so yeah, don't want to get involved.
It's like being stood up on your first date 10 times, and then you go on a date and you get, oh, okay, it was great, and then you get stood up another 4 times. Do you know what I mean? And it was constant, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's just that relationship would have to, is key, it's integral. It can't happen. If you want to do it legitimately, we have to work with the Harbour team, and if they're not really playing ball, then there's not something we want to pursue and be in a relationship where it would be difficult, because it's already difficult from the outset before we've even done anything really. So that made the decision easier, because we feel like we've done everything we can do. We got the right people on board, raised money, knew we could raise the money if we had the mooring. You know, we've felt like we've done everything you could possibly do to try and make this happen, but still, there's still some people that still have to say, yes, you can do that.
And I think to add to that, especially in the early days, everything they asked us to do, which felt unreasonable, above and beyond, which we know factually other venues weren't asked to do, we were like, okay, that's just the game we need to play as Black Finders or whatever. That's what we thought. We're like, we'll just do that, because the passion and the goal is bigger than our egos right now. So we'll just do what they're asking, and we'll we'll reflect on it in a talk in the future, you know, when we've done it. But so I think, you know, we did all the right, I feel like we did everything that they asked and we did more. And it's, the lifeboat is like, we're zooming off to safety.
Yeah, we're going fast as we can to land. That's what the lifeboat is.
Enjoy the beach.
Yeah.
Oh, just a quick one. Just on the international scale, because you guys travel a lot as well. You do stuff abroad. You mentioned Oakland earlier, America, yeah? There's international reputation the city has. So do you feel that everything shifted after Colston? Because that created a big international kind of black presence thing happened, didn't it?
Yeah.
Right? So before that, though, there was like, I met American tourists who were coming to the city because they'd heard we had a monument in the city centre, which is the Perez Bridge.
Yeah.
And they were disgusted to find it was a tiny little plaque just down by where the bins are.
Yeah.
And there's nothing actually visually representing African culture. Do you think things are changing for the international perspective of our city? Because you're part of that story.
Yeah, I think things, because Colston coming down in that way, I definitely feel like, you know, the international reputation of Bristol has changed and shifted, and now people can see the black presence and, you know, the black influence. Yeah.
I was going to add to that two things. So, like, I do a lot of like talks, especially with North America, and it's always a point of interest to mention that story in terms of the history of the city. And people are like, "Oh my God, I had no idea," or the connection of the triangle. I think the second thing I'll say is I was at a talk with Afua Hirsch the other week, and she's based over in the state in LA for like a year, just from a film perspective. And what she was saying is not necessarily Bristol specifically, but in terms of global or North American interest, the effects of Top Boy and I May Destroy You, is that there's such an interest in Black British culture. I've just got a commission from a Canadian broadcaster who just really wants to hear about Black British stories, and mine are obviously centred, you know, it's being shot in Bristol this weekend, tomorrow. But so I think there's definitely a lot of interest globally around, I guess, diaspora experiences that haven't been told.
Yeah.
But I think that also just comes in line with the move around Black Lives Matter and just the global interest of
social media.
addressing the imbalance. And the thing that I was going to say earlier, my train of thought was, in terms of the city not being ready for it and not talking about, I guess, the history and more like the way it's memorialised / not memorialised, there's also not a conversation around where power lies in the city and who owns what in terms of land and bricks and mortar, and the impact that has on, especially, I guess, the Black community, but what that means for the future. So if everything's already sold and everything's already owned, and it's not going to sell any, you know, at a reasonable rate moving forward, and the level of investment you're going to have, it just keeps that sort of, I guess, imbalance ongoing in the city. So I think that's what people aren't ready. No one's even talking about that to even move forward.
Just one last question. You've got time for?
I think it's a very inspiring sort of an idea and very significant to watch it sort of die off. So it'd be very sad for a lot of us to see that happen. Now, has there been any consideration about leveraging your national artistic networks to perhaps host it somewhere that will have it, you know, any other harbour side in the UK? Is there anywhere else that you think you could host it, and then you could maybe have a seasonal trip to Bristol, for example? Because that would just keep the project live.
Yeah.
Well, it's a perfect sort of question, which I'll sort of answer, but not, because time's running out for our next steps. So moving forward, where we are now, like I said, the venue is finished in terms of us trying to pursue that any further. The Artist Network is very much alive. And so what we will be doing is we will be launching later this year, all things going well, sort of our international or global retreat experience for the diaspora and around the theme of home. And so whilst we can't necessarily bring the international community to Bristol, to residents in our space, we can take our artists out of the city to get inspired and to, you know, build those networks and create work. I think for us, we've got an artist that comes over from the States. He's coming next week, and he's been doing the same thing. And we've had a really great relationship building just from him being funded to do that exchange, which helps our network. So we want to kind of still add a value to the city in terms of what we can do for Black artists in the city, which also helps the whole ecology of the arts that are created in the city by supporting artists to go out of the country.
Yeah, and just to add, Bristol's, I mean, obviously I'm from Bristol. I was born here. My father was born here. The reason why it has to be in Bristol is because Bristol was the capital of the slave trade for about 150 years until Liverpool took over it. And we need to have that history remembered, that history acknowledged here in the city. So I'm very passionate about it. Would have definitely had to stay in the city, that sort of a project. So that's why we didn't think about taking it to any other harbour.
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of the historical context of it, but I thought, well, that might be more of a making a statement. Well, given the context, Bristol should have been a bit more accommodating, but it hasn't. So it still stays alive, but it's kind of floating.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. That was very inspiring.
All right, I think that's all we got time for. So I'm going to say thank you to Mike and Mina.
Thank you.
And I think if anyone else has any more questions, you'll...
Gonna do a little
While they're
social media.
doing that, before you go, if you want to stick around in Hot Desk today, find out more about what we do, please come find one of the studio team. Studio team, can you give a wave? Here we are. And we'll be happy to help. If you're watching online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. Thank you all for being here today. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you very much, guys.